Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the House Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee to order and ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Michelle, will you call the roll? Here.
Ryman,
Proxy.
Lee,
Here.
Tom, here, Hershey,
Proxy.
Irvin, Heller,
Here.
Plunk, here, Lawrence,
Here.
Millard,
Here.
Owlett,
Here.
Warner,
Here.
Zimmerman,
Here.
Kaczynski,
Here.
Burgos,
Here.
Cephas,
Proxy.
Delicio, here, Cambridge, Kozarowski, Madden, here, Rab, Sappy, Snyder, here.
We have a proxy for Borowitz also. First bill on the agenda this morning is House Bill 671, sponsored by Representative Heffley, and I'm going to ask Carrie to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. This bill will streamline the licensing for mobile retail food facilities. For example, the French fry truck that you'll see at a county fair will be operating in perhaps a Department of Agriculture jurisdiction this week, and maybe next week might move into a local health jurisdiction, like maybe the York Fair, which is in the city of York. The city of York has its own licensing and inspection. However, the standards are uniform across the states. So while we have different licensing jurisdictions, in fact, we have 149 different licensing jurisdictions plus the Department of Agriculture, the standards are the same to which they are inspecting. So, but the fees are not. The local health jurisdictions may charge whatever fee they want. So when a mobile food facility is licensed in one place and moves to another, they have to purchase the license wherever they move. And it can get pretty expensive. Some of the fees, well, for example, if they are only operating at fairs and festivals in the Department of Agriculture's jurisdiction, it's $14 a year. If they move into a local health jurisdiction, if it's York, if it's during the fair, it can be $50. If it is into one of the county health departments in the southeast, the cost ranges from $60 to $150 depending on the number of days that they are operating. So this bill will say you only need one license to operate across the state, and the license is that which is your home operating base location. So if my home is in one of those local health jurisdictions, then I pay that fee for the license, but that's good to operate across the state. And there's also a provision that whatever jurisdiction you're in can inspect. They can, even if it's not the licensor, they can inspect your mobile retail food facility and initiate enforcement action if necessary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. Is there any discussion on the bill? Representative Delicio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the explanation. So if someone, and I get that this should be streamlined, so could that other local jurisdiction then prevent them from selling because they might be is it possible to be in violation in one jurisdiction and not in another? I mean, as long as we're trying to help people be in business, I don't know if these regulations are statewide, if they're by county, or God forbid, even a smaller political jurisdiction.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer. Currently, they would be in violation if they don't have that jurisdiction's license. So there's county health departments.
When you say that, Carrie, you mean the jurisdiction in which they're
operating.
Operating.
Correct. So if they go into another jurisdiction and don't have that jurisdiction's license, if there is one, because I mean, there's, like I said, 149 local health jurisdictions. There's 6 county health departments, 37 cities, I think, and the rest are townships and boroughs. And then there are 29, I think, sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it's 29 counties are completely under the jurisdiction of the Department of Ag. So if they move into a local health jurisdiction and do not have its license, then they would currently be in violation. However, under this bill, since the standards are uniform across the state, they would only need one license because they all have to meet the same standards. The only difference really is the amount that the jurisdiction charges in a fee for the license.
But, okay, thank you. So a jurisdiction then could find them in violation.
Correct.
That would prevail.
That's right. This bill gives specific reciprocal enforcement authority to any licensor, even if it's not the licensor that actually holds that license.
So,
And that's possible because the standards are the same across the state.
so it's really to facilitate that, and then if we were to find out that there were other issues, we could come back.
Well, I mean, if there's a violation of, if they, I don't know, they're not holding the food to the right temperature, and they have a license from the Department of Ag, but they're operating in the city of Harrisburg, and they have a violation of actual food safety, then the city of Harrisburg inspector could initiate enforcement action or, tell them to correct it, whatever they would do to otherwise enforce anyone who would have a city license.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I had intended to offer the prime sponsor the opportunity to say a few words. If you'd like to do that now, Representative Heffley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this was brought to... Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was brought to my attention by some constituents in the district came in and they were having an issue with this. I think we all enjoy going to our local festivals and carnivals, probably like myself, many of you spend many weekends throughout your districts going to these festivals, and it's always nice to see the French fry truck. And those are small businesses, and all we want to do is just make it a little bit uniform, streamline it a little bit across the state, so they can operate and make sure that everybody's abiding by the rules, but making sure that they're not going to get gouged at some of these higher cost venues. So I would ask for an affirmative vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Heffley. Representative Millard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out that this does not in any way negate the high standards of inspection for food safety. What this does is to remove an obstacle for basically mom and pop businesses that are invited to a lot of the fairs and street carnivals and everything across the Commonwealth, and put so much back into the communities through their benevolent actions. And really, again, I think this is a great piece of legislation. I applaud the maker of the bill and would ask everybody to be very supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Millard. Any additional comments or questions? The bill is moved by Representative Lawrence and second by Representative Fee. Are there any negative votes? Seeing none, hearing none, the bill is reported unanimously from the committee. The second bill on the agenda is House Bill 1037, sponsored by our colleague Representative Lawrence, and I'm going to ask Carrie to explain that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill amends our building code to exempt certain historic agricultural buildings from most of the provisions of the code. A historic agricultural building is defined as one that was originally constructed as an agricultural building, was built before 1980, and is only used for private events. And the provisions of the code that would not apply are basically sprinklers. The building would still have to be inspected by a third-party inspector and be up to electrical code. They have to have the smoke alarm systems and fire extinguishers required by the code, and have the egress standards for historic buildings that are required by the International Existing Building Code. And if all of those are in place, then the inspector, would verify that. The owner also has to file an affidavit with its municipality signifying a few things like smoking will be prohibited inside and within 50 feet of the structure. There will be no open flames within 50 feet of the structure except for sterno and 3 candles that might be necessary for a wedding ceremony. The structure can't contain an oven, and the owner has to maintain liability insurance. So that affidavit has to be filed with the municipality, and if either the inspection report or the affidavit are not filed, then the owner of the venue can be charged with a violation. It's a summary offense with a fine of up to $1,000 per day of offense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. And as I stated, the prime sponsor is Representative Lawrence. Representative, I offer you opportunity for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I'll try to be brief. In recent years, farms and particularly barns have grown in popularity as wedding venues. They've been popularized on television and other scenes. But candidly, many of these barns in Pennsylvania operate in a legal gray area, and this bill serves to bring everyone out of the shadows and try to create some standards. Using barns for social events is nothing new. My own parents had their wedding reception at my grandparents' farm in the early 1970s. And these barns provide extra income for farmers. And that's actually, I think, a pretty big deal right now. Some of these operations are helping to keep family farms afloat. In reading some of the comments we've received on this legislation, we've seen a number of organizations in favor of this bill. Some have brought forward some questions. Some have argued that the bill should not proceed. They're concerned that we have a duty to keep the public safe, and this bill won't do that. I would argue that keeping the public safe is exactly why we should be moving this bill. Wedding barns are going to continue to operate whether we pass this bill or not. I contend we should move this bill exactly so that we know these barns have met some basic requirements for fire safety, egress, electrical wiring, and insurance. I think it's better to put some safety parameters around this practice than continue with what we have today, which is inconsistent enforcement and a patchwork approach. The bill is narrowly tailored. I've been working with staff on getting this language right for almost 5 years. It's geared towards family farmers. I'd like to bring to the attention of the committee, the bill specifically prohibits having an oven or a stove in the barn. This is important. What we're trying to prevent is a restaurant from purchasing a barn and then trying to convert it into a restaurant, trying to skirt the building code. What we're really looking at attacking here is barns that are used on family farms for weddings and other social events. Certainly would be happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you bringing the bill before the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lawrence. Comments? Representative Zimmerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's already been said, but I just want to echo the what's going on down on some of our farms is there's lots of changes in agriculture, and so some of these barns and buildings end up being empty or need to have an opportunity for reuse of some sort. And because even if they are not doing anything with a building, they're still paying property taxes, and somehow this is just another way that a farmer can kind of keep the farm operating and make some extra income. And I think it's a real good common sense bill. It's what our Pennsylvania agriculture and our farmers need. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Chairman Paszynski?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. To the maker of the bill, just a couple questions, Representative Lawrence. Now, you said there's going to be a third party that will inspect the buildings, but it's my understanding it is not a certified inspector. Is that correct?
So the bill specifies that a third-party agency will inspect the building, and then that information will be passed along to the township in the way of an affidavit. And these third-party agencies are common across the Commonwealth and inspect buildings all the time.
The reason I asked that question, the Pennsylvania Association of Township Supervisors are against this bill. And one of the major concerns, once again, is always the safety. So I think all of us can agree that a barn has been designed, and built for agricultural purposes. The ambiance of a beautiful barn and now the possibility of a party and wedding makes a great atmosphere. If we're going to do it from the standpoint of our own personal family and our own personal barn, that's our own personal decision. The question is, when we involve the public, and when we're involving the public for profit, we have, based on history, requirements to provide that safety. And that's why it is not clear in this bill who the third-party agency is, and it is also clear that they are not an actual certified L&I code inspector. So that's one of the concerns that I have.
Chairman
How-
Paszynski,
Yes.
in the bill, it defines third-party agency as a person, firm, or corporation certified by the Department of Labor and Industry as a construction code official and contracted to perform. So it is a certified third-party official, as defined in the bill. In the law. In the law, yeah.
In the law. Well, I thank you for that clarification. That's important because that wasn't the information that I received. I will go back to that source for sure. How about the ADA requirements? Do we have ramps? Do we have the appropriate ADA facilities available for those folks in this barn?
So I appreciate the gentleman bringing that topic up. So the bill deals strictly with older structures that were built prior to the enactment of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I would suggest to the gentleman that a church built at the exact same, for example, let's say we have a church that was built in 1930 and a barn that was built in 1930 across the street from each other. You know, a bride and groom could select either venue for their wedding. That church hasn't been inspected in decades. We have no idea what the electrical wiring looks like. There's almost certainly a church kitchen that hasn't been inspected since the Eisenhower administration. We have no idea what egress looks like out of that building. We have no idea if that building is properly insured. If this bill moves forward, we would, on the other hand, know that the barn has modern, updated electric, meets modern egress standards, has fire alarms, detection systems, fire extinguishers. We know the building's insured. We know there will be no open flames within the building or within 50 feet of it, and no stoves or ovens. I would suggest that the barn would be the safer, frankly, of the two structures.
It's my understanding that the BCO employed or designated by the municipality to act as the code official for that area is not. So we have some controversy on that issue. It says, it's not the BCO employed or designated by the municipality to act as the code official for that area. The building owner could use any third party they want. It undermines the local authority. That's why I think the township supervisor against it.
I guess, Mr.
Bruce.
Chairman, I would just very briefly respond in several ways. First of all, this bill does not take into consideration zoning, which is entirely in the purview of the local municipality. This bill is silent on that, and it's silent on that for a reason. This bill does not deal with that. It deals solely with the occupancy, with the building code issues on the wedding barn. So municipalities remain, all the control remains with the municipalities as it relates to zoning and those kind of issues as it relates to the facility. Now, as far as it goes with, who comes in to inspect the building, certainly I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody on that topic. The approach that we took in drafting the legislation was a third-party agency. I'd like to make mention of the fact that the owner of the structure will be paying that third-party agency. They will be the ones paying for the completion of that report that is then filed with the township.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bruce Hanson is the director of our research department and our resident expert on the UCC issues, and offer him the opportunity to offer some comments, if you would, sir.
To be clear, what Representative Lawrence said is correct. The bill's written to allow the owner of the barn to utilize any certified third-party agency in the state. Again, third-party agencies are certified by the Department of Labor and Industry. That's the way the bill's written. The local, say there's a third-party agency that's contracted by the local municipality, you're technically correct. The owner of the building could use anybody they want in the state that's certified third-party agency. So what you're saying is correct, but also what Mr. Lawrence is arguing is that the owner should be able to use whatever certified third party they want. And hopefully that clarifies a little bit.
Thank you. Additional comments? Representative Delicio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why was January 1st, 1980 the date picked?
We had to settle on a date. And I looked at what some other states are doing, and that date was one that another state had used.
It's not tied to any type of code or other landmark. It just was a sort of a year of demarcation, so to speak.
Yes, and certainly I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody about if there's a better date or somebody would like to suggest something earlier or later. I'm certainly flexible on that.
Thank you. Just curious. Thanks.
Representative Hanbidge?
I appreciate the safety constraints that you put in with respect to insurance and fire and things like that. Are there any limitations with respect to haylofts and open spaces? Haylofts, in their construction, are designed so that you can throw hay over them easily, and typically they fall long distances. A lot of barns that I've been in have large open spaces with 25, 30, 50-foot drops.
So the bill does not comment on that.
Would you be open to any sort of amendment with respect to that?
Certainly would be happy to have a conversation about it. Absolutely.
Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, the bill is moved by Representative Lawrence, seconded by Representative Zimmerman, and I'll ask Michelle to call the roll.
Clauser,
Yes.
Borowitz, Diamond,
Yes.
Fee, Gillen, Hahn, Hershey,
Proxy, yes.
Irvin, Keller,
Yes.
Clunk, Lawrence,
Yes.
Millard,
Yes.
Owlett,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Pashinsky,
No.
Burgos,
Yes.
Cephas,
No.
Delicio, Henbidge,
No.
Kozarowski, Madden, Rab,
No. Proxy, no.
Sappy, Snyder.
The bill is reported from committee. The last bill on our agenda is House Bill 1277, sponsored by Representative Ortitai, and I'll ask Carrie to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1277 is a bill that will keep the fine and fee money that is collected from dog law enforcement in the dog law restricted account. There is a law that since 1987, we passed the law a long time ago that anything over the amount that was collected in the fiscal year 86-87 was supposed to be transferred to the judicial computer augmentation account. That results in the amount of fine money that can be kept in the dog law restricted account is approximately $69,000 from any fines or citations that are issued. So it has amounted in a loss of millions of dollars to the account. The dog law restricted account is in the red, and any little bit will help. This will keep, last year, or in 2017, the amount that was transferred was close to $218,000. The year before, it was close to $200,000, and prior to that, it was close to $250,000 for several years. So this will keep all that money in the dog law restricted account and keep it from being transferred to judicial computer system augmentation account. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
And Representative Ortitai is with us today. I'd like to offer him the opportunity for brief comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sponsored this bill because we're at a period of time in state in Pennsylvania where we're trying to really ratchet up the inspections with the commercial kennels that are out there, and to also go after the illegal kennels, particularly the illegal breeding kennels that are out there. Also, dog law investigates dog bites and complaints, and they keep a registry of that. And we're also trying to increase the level of licensing for dogs that are out there now. So I would ask for an affirmative vote so we can shore up this account so they can continue to operate and continue to keep everyone inspected and in line. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Chairman Paszynski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you very much for making sure that we're trying to get some of those dollars back. I think a lot of folks forget the importance of having enough funds into that system so we can take care of dog bites, stray dogs. We also can reimburse farmers for their animals, their livestock that's been killed by stray dogs. And the kennel aspect is really critical. So I thank you very much for your efforts. Appreciate it.
Representative Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do support this bill, but just for clarification for anybody who does not know, could someone explain what the Judicial Computer System Augmentation Account is and whether it has anything to do with dogs?
The Judicial Computer System Augmentation Account is what is used by the Unified Judicial System to keep records of, who's been bad, really. And it's we can use it. We can look up, if you Google or put your own name into it, you can see if you've had a traffic violation. It depends on which level of court, but it is something that is interesting, to say the least. But there are all divisions of the Unified Judicial System. So anyone that is collecting criminal citations or collecting money from criminal citations, any agency has their fines and fee money go into this account. Since 1986, there are a few exceptions. The Fish and Boat Commission, the Game Commission are exceptions. Counties and municipalities are exceptions. The Commission on Crime and Delinquency for Victim Witness Services grants, none of that is exempt from their money being transferred. Rape crisis centers, domestic violence shelters, emergency medical services operating fund, any money that would go into those is not transferred. And in 1999, there was an amendment that prevented the fines, fees, or costs which would otherwise be allocated to the Child Passenger Restraint Fund to not be transferred into the Judicial Computer Augmentation Account. So I think there's $11 million in the account, $11 billion in the account now. Not that they don't need it. It is obviously the purpose of doing this was to build the account. Now it's about maintaining the account.
Bottom line, Representative Diamond, it's more important right now for the revenue to stay in the dog law fund than it is to go to the judiciary for the computer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree 100%.
Representative Delicio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was one of my questions, is what is the account balance at the Judicial Computer System Augmentation Account, number one? And I hope Kerry, you're saying 11 million with an M, not billion with a B. Otherwise, we need to have a whole other discussion.
You're right. It is million.
Quickly.
I'm sorry. It's million with an M.
Okay. Because I was going to say, we just solved the problems. We might as well adjourn now. And one more piece of legislation would take care of that. So thank you for that. And then, it doesn't look like we'll be hearing whoever is the steward of that account anytime soon trying to get their money back. And guess it warrants a look to see what other monies are going into that. So I agree, but thank you. I was curious as to what that account balance looked like. And I also know just asking one single question as to an account balance does not give the picture. So if they use $12 million a year, having an account balance of $11 million means diverting $236,000 from that account is not going to help them. But if they use $2 million a year and having an account balance of $11 million, so I recognize that we have a very small piece of the picture, but I'll make an assumption here, and I don't like to make any assumptions as a rule, that this money is more needed where its original intent was, and none of this is retroactive. It's just going forward.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And according to Chairman Pashinsky and Destiny, the current cash balance in the Judicial Computer System Fund is just over 89 million.
Sorry.
And this amounts to about 250,000 is what we're talking about.
So
Yes.
sorry.
Additional comments, Representative Zimmerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, when it comes to the dog license fees, is that in this account as well? Is that correct?
All dog license fees from individual licenses and kennel licenses go into the dog law restricted account, but the money that's collected from those is not transferred into the judicial computer augmentation account. It's only the amount that is in excess of around $69,000 that's collected from the fines and fee money that is transferred to the judicial computer account.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, the bill is moved by Representative Millard, seconded by Representative Klunk. Are there any negative votes on the bill? Seeing none, hearing none, the bill is reported from committee unanimously. I'd like to thank the members, and this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.